How's it going, everyone? This is Kevin. Today I want to bring along with me to discuss to see which one would be a better value between the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 or the Sony 20-70mm f4. So let's jump right into it. I've been shooting with the 20-40 by Tamron for a bit now, and I've honestly really loved the range from 20-40 with the 2.8. Now, I know it's not the range that the 20-70 has, but you're also giving up a little bit more f-stop when it comes down to the Sony since it's an f4. So it got me curious to think if you really need that f4 or f2.8, does it really matter? Are you wanting to give up a little bit more focal range to get the 20-40 because you can get a 2.8? Or do you think it'd be more beneficial to have a 20-70 with an f4? Full disclosure, I don't have the Sony, but what I plan to do is just simply shoot at 2.8 respectively with a 20-40 and to the 2.8 range, and then also at f4 just to kind of compare to see how much the bigger difference in the bokeh and the settings and everything, just to see if it really matters, or or maybe it doesn't matter for you. Because for me, I know I've been asked like why I went with the Tamron over the Sony, and I kind of want to give you a little bit more thought process than just because it's Tamron and I have Tamron lenses, or I didn't go with the other one because it's an f4. So that way maybe it'll help you out with your decision into looking which lens would be better for you. So the first thing is that the Tamron comes in at $699, and you obviously get the f2.8 from the 20 to the 40 range, and that's what it offers. It doesn't have any OSS or anything like of stabilization to be able to be paired with like your camera. So whatever the camera has for in-body stabilization is what you get. It's a 67mm thread size, so it's pretty nice. It works for what you need, and it's very compact and everything. So I think it's a great lens for the value. So the Sony 20-40 is an f4, and it comes in at $1,098, so basically $1,100. And with that, you get all the way from 20 to 70, but in an f4. Some pros and cons for the lenses. Obviously with the Sony, you get the more range because you get past the 40, but you get it at a con with the f4. The good thing about the Sony, obviously it's a native lens to Sony camera, so you're gonna get better autofocus, a better stability when it comes down to the stabilization and active stabilization with your camera. And that's what they claim that's gonna be better because it's a native Sony lens. With the Tamron, you get the pros of the 2.8. It's a light lens as well and everything. So with that, you get a pretty good versatile lens. You don't get any good, I guess they would say it's not good for the stabilization within the camera, but it's still pretty good. I think it's been done pretty great for what I've used it for, but it is what it is. And also, well, I guess the con is you don't get more range than what the Sony provides. And there's a big difference in the weight range because obviously you get more focal range when it comes down to the Sony. I don't think it's a very hindering factor, but it is a little bit of a difference. The Sony comes in at 488 grams and the Tamron comes in at 365 grams from what I can recall. That is correct, actually. So you got a little bit obviously of a difference in weight. Is it going to be that major? Probably not, but I mean, a little bit of an extra weight or less weight does make a difference when you're out shooting, so keep that in mind. But that's pretty much it when it comes down to the spec side. So I think it's time to just go ahead and put this lens onto the camera, and we're just going to go ahead and shoot at f2.8 and kind of change a little bit of the focal ranges, and then do it the same thing with the f4 with this. And then I'm going to use my 35-150 to just basically get the remaining range so you could see what it would look like at f2.8 and at f4, so that way it gives you a little bit of an idea. Like, I wish I would have the the Sony, but luckily I have the same focal ranges that I can use just to give you yourself like a little bit of the idea of what you can do, and maybe it'll help you out since I know I've been asked a lot about it, so thought it'd be a little bit more beneficial to just showcase a little bit of the f2.8 to the f4 to compare it, and that way you can see it for yourself if it makes sense for you to go with an f4 to get that extra range, or if you want to just not get the extra range and go with the f2.8 because it just makes sense for you. And now we have the Tamron 20-40 on the camera right now to be able to kind of go with that f2.8. That's what we're shooting with right now, and then in a bit I'm going to be going into that f4 range, but that way you can see what it looks like at 20mm at f2.8. And now this is at f4, so still the 20mm range. That way you can get an idea of it. So did it make that much difference in the bokeh? That's up to you to decide what would make sense for you, but that's just what it looks like now. Obviously, you're gonna have to let a little bit more light in. So I'm using my Sony a7S III. I just did the 12,800 ISO with my ND filter just to kind of, you know, make it darker or not. So if I need to, I can just make it like darker or lighter. Just so you know, there's a reason why I just want to use this camera. It just made more sense to do it for now, since we're gonna have to try to keep it as neutral as possible so that everything makes sense. And this is now at the 24mm range at f2.8, so you can see what it looks like closer to my face with the background and everything, how it looks blurred or not. And in a bit we'll be going to that f4, but that way you get enough time to view it. And this is now at f4. This is what it looks like, the compression and the blurriness. You get to see it before I get to review it, I guess, but I can see it on my screen right here. So yeah, it looks still pretty good. It's not horrible, obviously. If you weren't shooting at 12,800 ISO, you obviously would have to make sure that you have enough light out here. So right now we have my light over there, obviously some light from the side coming in from the sun and everything, but that way you see that. Now this is at 28 at f2.8. That way you get to see that little bit of an example, see how the blurriness looks and not, and everything. So before we go to the f4, but that's what it looks like. And now we're here at the f4 range. Obviously it's not like that noticeable of the difference of the bokeh, but obviously it does affect the light because I'm trying to just keep it as neutral, but I was a bit overexposing. Obviously I'm using S-Log3, so I have to overexpose anyway, and I'm make sure that it stays as good as it can be so that it stays as matching as possible. This is the 35 at f2.8. Good compression, I think. It looks pretty good and nice and close and personal with some good bokeh kind of style. Looks nice and blurred in a good way where it's not overly done, but it's just enough that there's separation. So here we go with the f4 in a second, but that way you can see that f2.8. And now we got that f4 right here for you. We got the background, still good separation. I don't think it'll be that major of a difference from the f2.8 to the f4, but it is a difference enough that, you know, it makes sense that possibly it's just not right for you, but it could be the right one that you'd be fine to having it for that extra focal range. Now we got the 40mm at f2.8. This is what it looks like with the compression. So I'm just looking at the screen to make sure it looks noise or not. Even if I move back or if I just, you know, sit more where I was kind of style, but still good separation, enough, you know, kind of blurriness of the background that I think looks nice. So let's move on to the f4. Here we go with the f4. This is what it looks like. Is it a major difference or is it not really that noticeable? I don't know. Obviously, it's not going to be like a prime lens where you would have like maybe a 1.8 or 1.4 with the difference, especially in the 35 and the 40 range, since you could use a 35mm prime, like a 1.2, 1.4, or 1.8. But this is why we do the zoom, baby, because we got to get that extra focal range for whenever we need it. Now that we've kind of done that comparison, I'm going to put on my 35 to 150 and kind of go from the 50, 70 kind of range just to showcase what it would look like at f2.8 and then at f4, I guess. But technically my 35 to 150, that 50 range is 2.2, but I'm just going to keep it at 2.8 since in theory that's what it would be like with like maybe like a 24 to 70 or something like that. So that way you maybe have that ideology with it. So we'll be switching lenses right now. So this is the 50 range at f2.8. I'm going to kind of move back just a little bit, but this is where I was sitting right now with the same, like, you know, setup, distance and everything. So if I move back just a little bit, you can see the difference. That's what it looks like. So if I'm back to kind of where I was, this is where I was with the microphone area. And now we're going to go to that f4 so you can see the difference. Here we are with the f4. Is there a major difference for you? Is it not that noticeable? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But now I'm going to move back just a little bit again, just to showcase the difference of perspective so you can see it. kind of am just at the same somewhat area. This is with the 70 at f2.8. You're gonna have some nice, you know, compression and bokeh from it because that's just the range it is. So if we move back, I guess. That's what it looks like. So we're gonna go to that f4 and compare it. This is at f4 right now. The compression and the difference in bokeh shouldn't be too different. I think it'll be fine. Even whenever you have more of the telephoto range, I think it just doesn't showcase a bokeh as much because unless you're shooting with like a prime, I don't think you'll notice it. But I'm gonna scoot back a little bit for you as well. And we're back with the 20-40 Tamron f2.8 shooting at 2.8 at 20. That way you can just, you know, have that knowledge to help you out maybe perhaps. But when it comes down to the comparison with the 2.8 and f4, is there a major difference for you that it would make sense that, you know, maybe an f2.8 would make more sense? Do you shoot a lot of low light even that you might need it? That's another difference to kind of go with, because if you are shooting low light, well, you probably are better off with getting a 2.8 or maybe finding something like primes that you might use better so that you have a little bit more light into it without having to boost your ISO. But if you shoot with like a Sony a7S III that has really good low light capabilities, it might not matter as much to you because you can, you know, crank up that ISO to 12,800 and, you know, still have a clean image. So that's another option that could be for you. But for me, I think the price point difference is about like, you know, $400 give or take, because it's like $700 to $1,100. So it just depends on what you're willing to give up. If you want to give up a little bit of focal range to save some money and get that f2.8, or do you want more of a zoom range from the 20-70 and you don't mind that f4, well, maybe the Sony might be for you. There's a reason why I went with the Tamron 20-40 because I didn't need that extra focal range and I preferred having an f2.8 just because I know that I shoot relatively good in low light and as well during, you know, daylight. So I have my variable NDs, but I have my Sony a7S III when I need to push that low light capabilities as well. So it just made sense for me to not have to go with that. Plus, I have the 35 to 150 to cover the rest of the ranges. So the only reason why I wanted that Tamron 20-40 rather than staying with my 17 to 28 right here was mainly because I wanted to have a lens that I could have some versatility when it comes down to just condensing and having one lens just to vlog and take photos and everything like the videos that I've done before. Would it be something beneficial for you to go with the Sony or the Tamron? Let me know below because I would love to know which one makes sense for you and why. What makes you more enticed to one than the other? And is it just more the monetary value or maybe the f-stop or maybe the range? We'd love to know your thought process below. But that's my thought process, so hopefully it helps you out into finding out if you want to have an f2.8, maybe the f4, more focal range, or doesn't matter to you. Just thankful that you watched this video this far and made it to be able to see my examples. So if you have any more questions, please leave them below. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.